The rain felt like shattered glass, but the betrayal cut deeper. They weren't hunting her. They were hurting her. Elara's lungs clawed for air she couldn't spare. Each breath tasted like iron and desperation as her boots hammered against mud-slick cobblestones. The peasant skirts tangled around her legs, the fabric heavy with rain and fear. Behind her she could hear them, the hunters, their armor clanking in a rhythm that felt deliberate. Not the chaos of a chase, but the precision of men driving prey toward a killing ground. Run, Elara. Just run. But where? She'd been running for 3 villages. 3 nights of barn floors and stolen bread. Of watching shadows for the glint of steel. Of waking to Aiden's voice promising protection that felt more like a noose tightening. You're safe with me, Elara. I'm the only one who can protect you. But safety didn't explain the hunger in his orders. The way he always knew which road she'd take. The feeling that her memories had holes in them. Dark spaces where truth used to live. The medieval street blurred through the downpour. Torchlight bleeding gold and crimson into the night like a painting of hell. Her side screamed vicious and sharp, but she pushed harder. Ahead, maybe 50 feet through the storm, she spotted it. The Crimson Hall. Elegant iron script above massive oak doors. Amber firelight spilling from tall windows promised warmth. Forbidden. It looked forbidden. The kind of elite establishment where peasant girls entered as corpses, not guests. She didn't care. 30 feet. 20. She could hear them closer now. Aiden's voice cutting through the thunder. Elara. Stop running. You know I'm trying to help you. That was the problem. She didn't know. Not anymore. 10 feet. 5. Her hands hit the iron handles, slipping once on rain-slicked metal before finding purchase. The doors swung open with impossible ease, and she crashed inside. Into absolute silence. Elara slammed the oak doors behind her, her trembling hands dragging the iron bolt across until it locked with a sound like a coffin ceiling. The echo rolled through the space, final and damning. Please, she gasped, spinning to face the room, her voice broken and desperate. He's going to. The words died in her throat. The Crimson Hall wasn't a tavern at all. It was a war council disguised as a throne room. The space was all blackened stone and blood-red velvet. Leather seats the color of fresh wounds. Firelight dancing across walls lined with ancient weapons and older secrets. The air smelled of wine aged in darkness, burning cedar, and something else. Something wrong and intoxicating that made her heartbeat stutter for reasons that had nothing to do with running. Or everything to do with a different kind of danger. 6 figures occupied the room. Knights in midnight armor, standing like statues forged from shadow and steel. Their hands rested on sword hilts. Their faces were carved from violence and loyalty. Not one of them blinked. But it was the 7th man who shattered what remained of her sanity. He stood near the great stone hearth, one hand resting on the mantel with aristocratic ease. A crystal glass of wine, dark as arterial blood, balanced in his other hand. He didn't spin toward her in alarm like the others. Instead, he turned with predatory grace, setting down his glass with surgical precision before straightening to his full height. Tall, taller than Aiden, broader, wearing a long coat of deep crimson velvet over black leather and silk. It molded to his frame like it had been sewn onto him by fate itself, cut to accommodate shoulders that promised destruction and arms that looked capable of war or worship with equal devastation. His dark hair fell just past his collar, pieces of it tied back with a leather cord, the rest framing a face that looked like it had been carved by an artist drunk on beauty and cruelty. Sharp jaw, high brutal cheekbones, a mouth that had forgotten how to smile softly, a scar traced from his temple to his cheekbone, pale and precise, like a signature left by death that didn't take. And his eyes, gold, not brown, not amber, molten gold, ancient and inhuman, fixed on her with an intensity that made Aiden's obsession look like passing interest. This man looked at her the way kings claim thrones. Not with hope, with absolute certainty. A tattoo of runes spiraled up his neck from beneath his collar, disappearing into the dark of his hairline. Old magic. Vampire script. When he breathed, the symbols seemed to glow faintly. Something inside Elara's chest cracked open. Not fear. Recognition. I'm sorry, she stammered, hating how small her voice sounded. She was suddenly painfully aware of how she must look. Soaked to the bone. Her peasant dress clinging to her like shame. Dark hair plastered to her face and neck. Chest heaving. Barefoot. Filthy, trembling. Everything he was not. I didn't mean to intrude, she whispered. I just needed. Bang. The door shuttered behind her like a beast trying to break its chains. Her entire body flinched. She pressed harder against the wood, feeling it shake as the hunters pounded from the other side. Elara! Aiden's voice, sharp, furious, desperate, sliced through the silence like a blade. Elara, I know you're in there. Open the door now. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, trapped between the man who'd hunted her for weeks and the stranger whose golden eyes promised she'd never been his to chase. The man in crimson tilted his head. Slowly, deliberately, like a wolf studying something that had just walked into his den and mistaken it for sanctuary. His voice, when it came, was midnight and silk and the kind of danger that made women run toward it instead of away. You're late, Elara. The room held its breath. She swore she had never seen him before. His eyes said he'd been searching centuries to find her. Outside, the hunters pounded harder. Aiden's rage vibrated through the wood, through her spine, a promise of violence delayed but not abandoned. Inside, 6 knights shifted their weight, hands tightening on weapons, waiting for a command that hadn't yet been spoken. And between them, Elara Voss stood frozen, a hunted girl with no memory of why she mattered, a peasant who didn't belong in a room full of predators, a woman whose heart recognized a man her mind had never met. The Vampire King took a single step forward. Just one. The firelight caught the planes of his face, turned his eyes into molten gold, made the runes on his neck pulse with ancient power. Do you know, Lucian Draven said softly, his voice a caress and a threat, how long I've waited for you? Elara's breath hitched. I don't, she started. How many centuries? He continued as if she hadn't spoken. I've torn apart kingdoms searching for the mate the gods promised me. Her pulse hammered in her ears. I don't know you, she whispered. His smile was slow, devastating, and utterly without mercy. No, Lucian agreed, his gaze dragging over her like a physical touch, claiming, cataloging, consuming. But your blood does. He moved closer. Another step. The knights didn't move, didn't breathe. Your soul does. Another step. She should run, should scream, should do anything but stand there drowning in the weight of his attention. And before this night ends, Elara Voss. He stopped directly in front of her, so close she could feel the cold radiating from his body, could see the way his pupils dilated as he breathed in her scent, could watch the predator beneath the prince struggling for control. You will remember too. Bang, bang, bang. Elara! Aiden roared. Open this door or I'll burn it down. Lucian didn't even glance toward the noise. His eyes never left hers. You have a choice, he said quietly. Run back to the men who were hired to deliver you for slaughter. Her stomach dropped. Or stay with the king who has waited lifetimes to protect what belongs to him. I don't belong to anyone, Elara breathed. His smile sharpened. Keep telling yourself that, little queen. He reached out, slowly, giving her time to pull away, and caught a strand of her wet hair between his fingers. The touch was gentle. The possession in his eyes was absolute. But when your power awakens, Lucian murmured, his thumb brushing her jaw. When your memories return and you remember who you were before they stole you from me. His hand dropped. He stepped back. You'll understand why I will burn this world to ash before I let anyone take you again. The door splintered. Wood cracked. Aiden's voice rose to a scream. The knights drew their swords in perfect unison, a sound like death being unsheathed. And Elara stood at the center of it all, a girl who'd been running from hunters, not knowing the Vampire King had been hunting for her all along. Lucian turned his back to her, an insult or a test she couldn't tell, and lifted one hand in a casual gesture. "Kill anyone who crosses that threshold," he said calmly. "Except Crowhurst." The knights bowed. "Him," Lucian continued, pouring himself another glass of wine as if the door weren't about to shatter, "I'll handle personally." He glanced over his shoulder at Elara, golden eyes gleaming with dark promise. "Welcome home, my queen." The door exploded inward, and the war for Elara's soul began. The first hunter broke through the shattered doorway like a battering ram made flesh. Elara didn't have time to scream. The knight closest to the entrance moved with liquid violence, one fluid motion that ended with the hunter's body crumpling to the floor, throat opened, blood pooling black in the firelight. The man didn't even have time to raise his sword. Two more hunters poured through the gap. The knights met them like a wall of blades in darkness. Steel rang against steel, sparks flying, but the sound was almost polite compared to the wet, final noises that followed. These weren't men fighting. This was an execution dressed as combat. Elara stumbled backward, her spine hitting the stone wall, unable to look away from the carnage unfolding in the doorway she'd crashed through moments ago. The hunters, armored men she'd fled from for weeks, were being cut down like wheat before a scythe. Efficiently, methodically, without mercy or hesitation. And Lucian Draven hadn't moved from his position by the hearth. He lifted his wine glass to his lips, took a slow sip, and watched the slaughter with the detached interest of a man observing a mildly entertaining theater performance. "Stop!" Elara's voice cracked. "Please just." "They came to kill you," Lucian said without looking at her. His tone was conversational, almost gentle. "Did you think I'd offer them wine?" Another hunter fell. Then another. "I didn't ask you to." "You didn't have to." Now he did turn, those molten gold eyes finding hers across the blood-soaked chaos. "The moment you crossed that threshold, you became mine to protect. Whether you accept it or not is irrelevant to the facts of what you are." "I'm not yours," she hissed, even as her traitorous body pressed harder against the wall, seeking any distance from the violence, from him, from the truth trying to claw its way into her consciousness. His smile was slow and devastating. "Your heart is racing. Your pupils are dilated. You can feel it, can't you? The pull. The recognition your rational mind is trying so desperately to deny." He was right. God help her, he was right. Something in her chest was singing in his presence. Something old and buried and wrong was waking up, stretching like a creature that had been sleeping too long in the dark. The last hunter at the doorway died with a gurgling scream. Silence fell like a curtain. 6 knights. 6 bodies. Not one of Lucian's men had so much as a scratch. "Aiden," Lucian called into the sudden quiet, his voice carrying through the splintered doorway into the rain-soaked street beyond. "I know you're out there. Stop sending lambs to a wolf's den and face me yourself." For a moment, nothing. Then Aiden Crowhurst stepped through the threshold. Elara's breath caught. She trusted this man. Run to him. Believed him when he said he was protecting her from forces she didn't understand. He looked nothing like a protector now. Tall and broad-shouldered, dark hair plastered to his skull from the rain, wearing leather armor that had seen recent combat. His sword was drawn, fresh blood, already staining the blade. His eyes, sharp and gray, locked onto her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Not concern. Not relief. Hunger. "Elara," Aiden said, his voice rough. "Step away from him. Now." She couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. "Touching," Lucian murmured, setting down his wine glass with precise care. The devoted guardian routine. "Tell me, Crowhurst, did you practice that tone? Or does betrayal come naturally to your bloodline?" Aiden's jaw tightened. "I'm not the monster in this room, Draven." "No," Lucian agreed pleasantly, taking a single step forward. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "You're just the mercenary who accepted gold to hunt an innocent woman across 3 territories, and deliver her to the Convergence for ritual slaughter. So much more honorable. Elara's knees threatened to buckle. What? Don't listen to him, Aiden snapped, his eyes never leaving Lucian. He's a vampire king, Elara. He's incapable of truth. He wants your blood for his own purposes. I want what was stolen from me, Lucian interrupted, his voice dropping to something dark and lethal. There's a difference. He moved then, so fast Elara's eyes couldn't track it, and suddenly he was standing between her and Aiden, his body a wall of crimson and menace. She doesn't remember, Lucian continued softly. The binding you used saw to that. Very thorough work. Almost elegant, if it wasn't so catastrophically stupid. Aiden's sword rose slightly. She's safer not remembering. Safer away from you and your cursed court. She's safer, Lucian said, each word precise as a blade. With the mate bond that has protected her bloodline for 3,000 years. She's safer with me. And you were paid handsomely to make certain she never reached me. The room held its breath. Elara's mind spun. Mate bond. 3,000 years. Ritual slaughter. Every word was a hammer blow against the fragile reality she'd constructed. Is it true? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Aiden, is it true? Aiden's expression flickered just for a moment. Guilt. Resignation. Calculation. That flicker told her everything. I was trying to save you, he said finally. By selling her, Lucian corrected. Let's use accurate language. Aiden lunged. Lucian caught his sword arm mid-strike without even looking, twisting with surgical precision until bone cracked and Aiden's weapon clattered to the floor. The scream that tore from Aiden's throat was animal. You'll live, Lucian said coldly, releasing him. Because my mate, despite everything, seems to have a conscience. But if you come for her again. His eyes flashed pure gold, inhuman and ancient. I'll make you beg for the mercy of death you'll never receive. He turned to his knights. Remove him. Dump him outside the city walls. 2 knights moved forward, hauling Aiden's writhing form toward the shattered entrance. And then Lucian's attention, all of it devastating and complete, turned to Elara. Now then, he said quietly, let's discuss what happens next. Elara couldn't stop shaking. The bodies were gone. The blood remained. Dark pools soaking into ancient stone, the metallic scent thick enough to taste. Lucian's knights had removed the corpses with the efficiency of men who'd done this 1,000 times before, and now she stood alone in the throne room with the vampire king and his silent sentinels. Sit, Lucian said, gesturing toward one of the leather chairs near the hearth. I'd rather stand, she managed, though her legs threatened to betray her. His mouth curved slightly. That wasn't a request. The command in his voice wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. It resonated through her bones like a tuning fork struck against her spine, and before her conscious mind could protest, her body was moving toward the chair, sinking into leather that smelled of smoke and something darker. She jerked upright immediately, fury cutting through her shock. What did you just? Your blood recognizes my authority, Lucian said calmly, pouring a fresh glass of wine. It will betray you like that until you learn to shield. Another gift from whoever bound your memories. They left you defenseless. I don't understand any of this. Her hands fisted in her soaked skirts. I don't understand you. An hour ago I was running for my life, and now you're talking about mate bonds in 3,000 years and you want answers. He moved closer, offering her the wine glass. She stared at it like it might bite her. Is it poisoned? If I wanted you dead, little queen, you'd have died the moment you entered my territory. He pressed the glass into her trembling hand. Drink. You're in shock. The warmth of his fingers against hers lasted only a second, but it burned. That same wrongness rightness that made her chest ache with recognition she couldn't name. She drank. The wine was rich, complex, and definitely not blood despite its color. Her shoulders dropped slightly as the warmth spread through her chest. Lucian settled into the chair across from her with that same predatory grace, One ankle crossed over his knee, every inch the monarch holding court. Better. No, she said honestly. Nothing about this is better. Fair. His eyes tracked over her face, cataloging details she couldn't hide. Then let's start with what you do remember. Your name. Your age. Where you're from. Elara Thorne, 23. I grew up in Millhaven, a farming village 2 territories west. The words came automatically, a script she'd recited to herself 1,000 times. My parents died when I was young. I've been working as a seamstress, moving between towns for work. All lies, Lucian said softly. Her breath caught. Excuse me. Carefully constructed lies built on a foundation of memory suppression and false identity grafting. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, those golden eyes holding her captive. You're not 23. You're not from Millhaven. Your parents aren't dead. And you've never been a seamstress. The wine glass trembled in her hand. You're insane. Test it, he challenged. Think hard about your childhood. Your earliest memory. Can you see your mother's face? Your father's? Can you remember the house you grew up in with any clarity? Or is it all just impressions? Shadows? A story you tell yourself that never quite feels solid. She opened her mouth to argue. Closed it. Opened it again. Because he was right. Her memories were like paintings viewed through fog. Shapes and colors that suggested a narrative, but never crystallized into actual detail. She'd always attributed it to trauma, to the grief of losing her parents young. But now, staring into the knowing gold of Lucian's eyes, another possibility cracked open like a chasm beneath her feet. What did they do to me? The question came out broken. Bound your memories. Suppressed your power. Hid you in plain sight among mortals. His voice gentled just slightly but enough that she noticed. You were 6 years old when they stole you during a blood moon ritual. Old enough to be identified as my mate. Young enough that the binding wouldn't kill you outright. 6 years old. Who? She whispered. Who would do that to a child? The Convergence. A coalition of vampire houses who believe the old bloodlines, the royal bloodlines, are too dangerous to continue. He paused, something dark flickering across his expression. They've spent centuries trying to eliminate anyone who carries the ancient power. Your bloodline. Mine. The bonds that tie us. Elara's head spun. This is impossible. I'm not, I can't be. You are Elara Thorne, Lucian said, each word falling like a hammer. Daughter of Marcus and Lyanna Thorne, House of the Silver Moon. Last living heir to the Morningstar line. And you were promised to me before either of us drew our first breath. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against stone. Neither of them moved. I'm a peasant, she said desperately. I'm nobody. You're a queen who doesn't remember her crown. He rose in one fluid motion, closing the distance between them. But your blood remembers. Your soul remembers. And before this night ends, Elara, your mind will remember too. He offered his hand. Elegant, long-fingered, decorated with silver rings bearing symbols she didn't recognize but somehow knew. Come with me, Lucian said quietly. Let me show you who you really are. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. To run. To cling to the simple lies of seamstress work in village life and ordinary mortality. But something deeper, something that pulsed in her veins like a second heartbeat, reached toward him like a flower turning toward fatal sunlight. If I go with you, Elara heard herself say, and this is all some elaborate trick, then you have my permission to drive a stake through my heart yourself, Lucian finished. His hand remained extended, steady and sure. I've waited 17 years to find you, Elara Thorne. I can wait 5 more minutes for you to decide if you trust me. Outside thunder rolled. Rain hammered against ancient stone. And Elara Thorne, whoever she really was beneath the bindings and lies, placed her trembling hand in the vampire king's palm. His fingers closed around hers like a vow, like a verdict, like fate finally, inevitably clicking into place. Good girl, Lucian murmured. Now let's go wake up your power.
The castle rose from the cliffs like a nightmare carved in stone and moonlight. Elara sat rigid in the black carriage, watching through rain-streaked windows as Lucian's fortress came into view. Spires that pierced the clouds. Walls that had witnessed centuries. Gothic architecture that seemed to breathe with malevolent life. She'd made a terrible mistake. Having second thoughts? Lucian asked from the seat across from her. He hadn't touched her since helping her into the carriage, but his presence filled the small space like smoke, invasive and inescapable. I'm having all the thoughts, she said tightly. Most of them involving how spectacularly stupid I am. Honest. I appreciate that. He tilted his head, studying her in the dim lantern light. For what it's worth, your instinct for self-preservation is functioning perfectly. You should be terrified. I am, objectively speaking, the most dangerous thing you'll ever encounter. That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be true. The carriage lurched over cobblestones as they passed through massive iron gates. But I'm also the only thing standing between you and the people who want to bleed you dry on an altar. So we find ourselves in this delightful paradox. The carriage stopped. A knight opened the door, and cold air flooded in, carrying the scent of rain and ancient stone and something else, something that made the hairs on Elara's neck rise. Power. Old and vast and patient. Lucian descended first, then offered his hand again. She ignored it, gathering her still damp skirts and climbing down herself. Her bare feet hit freezing stone and she hissed. Stubborn, Lucian observed. Peasant, she shot back. We're used to discomfort. You're not a peasant. And pretending you are won't make the truth any less inevitable. He swept past her toward the towering entrance, his crimson coat billowing like wings. Try to keep up. The castle doesn't like strangers wandering alone. She hurried after him, because the alternative was standing alone in a courtyard that felt like it was watching her. The massive doors opened before Lucian touched them, groaning on ancient hinges. The interior stole what little breath she had left. A grand hall stretched before them, vaulted ceilings lost in shadow, chandeliers dripping with black crystals that caught the candlelight and fractured it into 1,000 bleeding stars. Tapestries depicting battles and blood rituals lined the walls. Statues of warriors and monsters stood sentinel in alcoves. And everywhere, the sense of something alive and aware, tracking her movement through the space. Your castle is haunted, Elara whispered. My castle is sentient, Lucian corrected, shrugging out of his coat. A servant appeared from nowhere to take it. 3,000 years of vampire magic soaked into the stones. It has opinions. Preferences. And apparently, he glanced at the chandelier directly above them, which had begun to glow brighter. It likes you. The light pulsed once, twice, like a heartbeat. Elara took an involuntary step backward. That's not possible. You're standing in a vampire king's castle after being told you're his magically bonded mate, and that's where you draw the line of possibility? Lucian's amusement was dry as dust. Come. We're going to the Bloodstone Chamber. That sounds like a place where people get murdered, she said, following him anyway because her options were limited and her curiosity was a traitor. Only on Tuesdays. Today is Friday, you're perfectly safe. She couldn't tell if he was joking. They climbed a spiral staircase that seemed to go on forever, passing floors and corridors that whispered with movement she couldn't quite see. Finally, Lucian stopped before a door marked with silver runes that seemed to writhe in the torchlight. Fair warning, he said, his hand on the door. What you're about to see will hurt. Your mind has been bound for 17 years. Breaking those bindings is like breaking bones so they can heal properly. Necessary. Agonizing. And irreversible. Her mouth went dry. What if I say no? Then I'll take you to a guest room, give you clean clothes and warm food, and we'll try again tomorrow. His expression was unreadable. I told you, Elara. I've waited 17 years. I'm a patient man when it comes to things that matter. And if the Convergence finds me before tomorrow? His eyes flashed pure gold. Then I'll paint this territory red with their blood and feed their corpses to the crows. But that's my problem, not yours. She believed him. God help her, she believed every word. Do it, Elara said, lifting her chin. Show me the truth. Something that might have been pride flickered across his face. Brave little queen. He pushed the door open. The chamber beyond was circular, carved entirely from black stone. In the center stood a raised dais, and suspended above it, floating in midair with no visible support, was a crystal the size of a human heart. It pulsed with inner light, deep red fading to violet at the edges. The moment Elara crossed the threshold, the crystal screamed. Not audibly. In her head. In her blood. In parts of herself she didn't know existed. She fell to her knees, gasping. Lucian was beside her instantly, his hand on her shoulder, his voice cutting through the psychic shriek. Breathe. Your power recognizes the bloodstone. It's trying to break free. Make it stop, she choked out. I can't. Only you can. His grip tightened. The stone shows truth to those of royal blood. It will show you what was taken. What you are. Who you were meant to be. The crystal pulsed brighter. Images slammed into her mind like knives. Asterisk a grand estate. A woman with silver hair braiding her dark curls. A man's laugh, warm and safe. Her father. Her real father asterisk. Asterisk our little Morningstar, he called her. Born under the blood moon, blessed by the gods. Asterisk. Asterisk running through marble halls. Learning to read ancient texts. Magic crackling at her fingertips even as a child asterisk. Asterisk and then, darkness. Chanting. Hands grabbing her. A ritual circle. Pain like her soul being torn in half asterisk. Asterisk a boy with golden eyes watching from the shadows. Young. Beautiful. Devastated asterisk. Asterisk I'll find you, he promised. No matter how long it takes. I'll find you. Asterisk. Elara screamed. The memories flooded back like a dam breaking, 17 years of stolen life, compressed into seconds of pure agony. And when she opened her eyes, gasping and shaking on the cold stone floor, she looked up at Lucian Draven with recognition that shattered what remained of her false world. I remember, she whispered. I remember everything. His expression cracked, just for a moment, into something raw and ancient and relieved. Welcome home, Elara Thorne, Lucian said quietly. My mate. My queen. My patient, devastating ruin. He offered his hand one more time. This time, she knew exactly what it meant when she took it.
Elara couldn't stop trembling. The memories kept coming in waves, crashing over her like a relentless tide, each one more devastating than the last. She sat on the edge of the dais, her fingers digging into cold stone, while 17 years of stolen life reassembled themselves inside her skull. She remembered her mother's face now, really remembered it. The sharp cheekbones, the silver blonde hair that caught moonlight like captured starlight, the way she'd sung old lullabies in a language Elara now recognized as high vampiric. She remembered her father teaching her to control the sparks of power that danced between her small fingers. His patience, his pride, his terror when the Convergence came. She remembered the binding ritual, the chanting, the way her 6-year-old body had convulsed as they carved her identity away piece by piece, replacing it with false memories and mortal limitations. And she remembered him. Her eyes found Lucian where he stood by the chamber's entrance, giving her space but watching with an intensity that made her skin burn. He looked exactly as he had in her recovered memories, golden eyes, brutal beauty, that same barely restrained violence wrapped in aristocratic control. Except in her memories, he'd been younger, 13 maybe 14, still growing into the monster he'd become. "You watched them take me," she said, her voice hollow. "You were there." His jaw tightened. "Yes. You did nothing." "I was a boy," Lucian said quietly, "surrounded by 20 of the Convergence's strongest warriors, watching my parents negotiate for your life. They threatened to kill you outright if we interfered. So we negotiated. We bought you 17 more years of breathing. 17 years of lies," she snapped, rage cutting through the shock. 17 years of thinking I was nobody. Nothing. A seamstress running from town to town without understanding why I never belonged anywhere. 17 years of being alive instead of dead. His voice hardened. "I'm not asking for gratitude, Elara. But don't mistake strategic retreat for abandonment. Every year since that night I've had people searching, hunting for any trace of the Morningstar bloodline, any whisper of a girl with your description." He moved closer, each step deliberate. "The binding was thorough. It hid you even from magical tracking, even from the mate bond itself." He stopped just beyond her reach. "Until 3 months ago when someone was careless. When Aiden Crowhus started asking questions in the wrong taverns, and my spies finally had a thread to pull." Elara's mind spun. "Aiden. He said he was protecting me. He was delivering you." Lucian crouched down, bringing himself eye level with her. "The Convergence hired him to track you, win your trust, and deliver you to their ritual site on the autumn equinox. 5 days from now. They need royal bloodshed under specific astronomical conditions to complete their grand working." "What working?" His expression went dark. "A spell to sever all remaining mate bonds. To end the old bloodlines permanently. They believe the ancient powers are too dangerous, too uncontrollable. They want a new order. One where power is distributed, regulated, contained." "That's," she struggled for words. "That's genocide." "Yes. Simple. Blunt. True. And you are the keystone. The last living heir of the Morningstar line. Your blood shed correctly would fuel the entire spell." Nausea rolled through her. "So I'm just a magical battery. A sacrifice. To them." Lucian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and caught a strand of her hair between his fingers. The gesture was gentle, almost reverent. "To me you're the other half of my soul. The mate the gods chose before either of us was born. The queen this kingdom has waited 3 centuries to crown." His thumb brushed her jaw, barely a touch, but it ignited something in her chest that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the devastating recognition she'd been fighting since she crashed into his hall. The mate bond. She could feel it now with her memories restored. A golden thread connecting her heart to his, pulled taut by 17 years of separation but unbroken, pulsing with power and promise and something that felt dangerously close to fate. "I don't know how to be a queen," she whispered. "You were born one. The rest is just remembering." His hand dropped, and she hated how much she missed the contact. "But first, we deal with the immediate problem. The Convergence. They know Aiden failed. They'll send others." Lucian straightened, offering his hand. "Which means we have perhaps 2 days before they mobilize a full assault. 2 days to awaken your power completely, bind you to the castle wards, and prepare for war." Elara stared at his outstretched palm. Everything in her life had changed in the span of hours. The girl who'd fled through the rain didn't exist anymore. That simple, frightened seamstress was just a ghost. A construct built on lies and binding magic. But the woman staring back at her from her recovered memories, the child who'd wielded magic like breathing, who'd been promised to a vampire prince, who carried the weight of ancient bloodlines in her veins, She didn't know how to be her either. What if I can't do this? The question came out smaller than she intended. Lucian's smile was sharp and utterly without mercy. Then we'll both die, the Convergence will win, and the old world will end. No pressure. Despite everything, the terror, the confusion, the weight of impossible expectations, a laugh bubbled up from her chest. Broken and slightly hysterical but real. You're terrible at motivational speeches, she said. I'm told honesty is more valuable than comfort. He tilted his head, studying her with those ancient gold eyes. Are you going to take my hand, Elara Thorne? Or shall I carry you to your chambers like the dramatic vampire king everyone assumes I am? She took his hand. The moment their palms connected, power flared, golden light racing up both their arms, the mate bond recognizing the contact and singing. Lucian's pupils dilated. His grip tightened. Feel that? His voice had dropped to something dark and rough. That's what they tried to suppress. What they feared. The kind of power that's born when two royal bloodlines merge. The light pulsed brighter and Elara gasped as magic. Her magic surged through her veins for the first time in 17 years. Not the weak sparks she remembered from childhood. Something vast and terrible and utterly uncontrollable. The bloodstone crystal shattered. Shards of red crystal exploded outward, disintegrating into glittering dust that swirled around them like a crimson galaxy. Lucian pulled her against his chest as the chamber's wards flared, protecting them from the explosion of ancient magic. And in the sudden silence that followed, pressed against the vampire king's heartbeat, Elara Thorne understood exactly why the Convergence wanted her dead. She wasn't just powerful. She was cataclysmic. Welcome back, my queen, Lucian murmured against her hair. Now let's teach you how to burn the world. The training courtyard was soaked in moonlight and old blood. Elara stood in the center of the stone circle, her borrowed clothes, black leather and dark silk that actually fit her frame, still feeling foreign against her skin. Everything felt foreign now. Her body hummed with magic she didn't know how to control. Her mind swam with memories that belonged to her, but felt like someone else's life. And Lucian Draven watched her from the shadows like a predator deciding whether to pounce or wait. You're afraid of it, he said, stepping into the moonlight. He'd removed his coat, rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms marked with more of those ancient runes. The power. You can feel it burning under your skin, and you're terrified of what happens if you let it out. It destroyed the bloodstone, Elara said tightly. A crystal that survived 3,000 years, and I shattered it without trying. Good. His smile was blade-sharp. That crystal was a crutch. A focusing tool for weak bloodlines who needed help accessing truth. He circled her slowly, predatory and assessing. You are not weak. And the sooner you stop flinching from what you are, the sooner we can actually keep you alive. She turned to track his movement. I don't know what I am. The memories are back, but the power. It's like trying to hold lightning in my bare hands. Because you're still thinking like the peasant girl they made you believe you were. Lucian stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his body. Elara Voss was mortal, powerless, safe. But Elara Thorne. His hand shot out, faster than she could track, and grabbed her wrist. Power exploded between them. Golden light erupted from the point of contact, racing up both their arms, and Elara gasped as the magic surged through her like a flood breaking through a dam. Stop fighting it, Lucian commanded, his grip unbreakable. Stop trying to contain it. Your power doesn't want to be caged. It wants to be weaponized. The light grew brighter, hotter, and Elara could feel something vast and terrible trying to claw its way out of her chest. It hurt. God, it hurt like her ribcage was too small for what lived inside her. I can't, she gasped. You can. His free hand caught her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. Look at me, Elara. Feel the bond. Feel what connects us. She did. And the world shifted. Suddenly she could feel him, not just his physical presence but everything. The ancient power coiled in his blood. the iron control he maintained over instincts that whispered for violence and hunger, the centuries of loneliness that had carved holes in his soul. And underneath it all, buried so deep, he probably didn't acknowledge it even to himself, the desperate, aching relief of finally finding what had been stolen from him. "There," Lucian murmured, and his voice was different now. Rough. Raw. "You feel it. The bond. The thread that ties your magic to mine." The golden light between them pulsed in rhythm with both their heartbeats. "Now pull," he said. "Draw on my power. Learn what yours is capable of when it's not being suppressed." She didn't know how. Didn't know what he was asking. But instinct, something older than thought, reached through the bond and pulled. Power slammed into her like a tidal wave. Elara screamed. Her back arched, magic flooding through every vein, every nerve, lighting her up from the inside like she'd swallowed the sun. It was too much. Too vast. Too impossibly, catastrophically powerful. She could feel the earth beneath her feet. The ancient stones of the castle. The wards Lucian had woven through the territory over centuries. She could feel the heartbeats of every living thing within the castle walls. Guards, servants, creatures that shouldn't exist but did. And she could feel the power in her own blood answering, rising, burning. "That's it," Lucian's voice cut through the chaos. "That's what they feared. What they tried to bury. You don't just carry the Morningstar bloodline, Elara. You are the Morningstar. The prophesied queen who could burn kingdoms to ash or raise them to glory." She opened her eyes, when had she closed them? And gasped. The entire courtyard was illuminated. Golden light poured from her skin, so bright it turned night into day. Runes she didn't remember knowing blazed up her arms in script that predated language. And Lucian stood in the center of it, bathed in her power, looking at her like she was salvation and damnation wrapped in one devastating package. "Beautiful," he breathed. "Terrifying. Perfect." The power was too much. She couldn't hold it, couldn't control it. "Lucian." His name came out as a plea. "I know." He stepped closer, directly into the inferno of her magic, and it didn't burn him. Instead, it recognized him, wrapped around him like it had found home. "You need an anchor. Something to ground the power so it doesn't consume you." "How?" "The mate bond." His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "Accept it fully. Stop fighting what we are. Let the bond stabilize your power." "I don't know how," she whispered, even as her magic writhed between them like a living thing. "Yes, you do." His forehead touched hers, and the intimacy of it was more devastating than any kiss. "You've known since the moment you crashed into my hall. Your soul recognized mine before your mind remembered. Trust it. Trust this." The bond pulsed between them, golden and inevitable and terrifying in its absoluteness. Elara had spent 17 years believing she was nothing. Nobody. A girl without past or future, running from shadows she couldn't name. But standing in the center of her own power, with the Vampire King's heartbeat sinking to hers through a bond older than kingdoms, she understood the truth. She wasn't nothing. She was everything the Convergence feared. And if she accepted this bond, accepted him, there would be no going back to simple or safe or ordinary. "Do it," she whispered. "Show me how to anchor the power." Lucian's smile was slow and absolutely wicked. "As my queen commands." He kissed her. Not gently, not carefully, like a man who'd waited 17 years for permission to claim what belonged to him. And the moment their lips met, the mate bond ignited. Power erupted outward in a shockwave that shook the castle to its foundations. Every ward blazed to life simultaneously. Every magical creature within 10 miles felt the surge of ancient power being awakened. When Lucian finally pulled back, his eyes were pure molten gold and his breathing was ragged. "Well," he said roughly, "that's one way to announce to the Convergence that you're no longer hiding." Elara's laugh was breathless and slightly unhinged. "Did we just declare war?" "Darling," Lucian murmured, his thumb tracing her lower lip. "We just promised them annihilation." Somewhere in the distance, warning bells began to ring. The Convergence was coming. And this time Elara Thorne would be ready. The warning bells were still echoing through the castle when she appeared. Elara felt the presence before she saw her. A cold, predatory awareness that made every instinct scream danger. She stood in the courtyard, still catching her breath from the power surge, still feeling the phantom heat of Lucian's kiss on her lips, when the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Lucian's entire body went rigid. "Get behind me!" "What?" A woman materialized from the shadows at the courtyard's edge, and Elara's breath caught. She was devastatingly beautiful in the way poisonous things often were. Tall and willowy, wrapped in a gown of midnight blue silk that clung to her curves like water. Her hair fell in platinum waves past her waist, and her eyes, ice blue and ancient, fixed on Elara with a kind of hatred that had teeth. "So this is the little peasant who thinks she can wear my crown," the woman said, her voice honey over razors. "How delightfully tragic." Lucian moved, putting himself between Elara and the newcomer. "You're not welcome here, Seraphine." Seraphine. The name clicked into place with Elara's recovered memories. Seraphine Noir, head of the Convergence's inner circle. Lucian's former betrothed before the mate bond had been discovered. And the woman who'd orchestrated Elara's kidnapping 17 years ago. "Not welcome in the castle where I lived for 3 centuries?" Seraphine's laugh was crystalline and cruel. "Where I ruled at your side, Lucian? Where I warmed your bed before you developed this unfortunate obsession with prophecy and fate." Something dark and possessive flickered across Lucian's face. "You ruled nothing. You were a political alliance that ended the moment I discovered my true mate existed." "Your true mate?" Seraphine's gaze slid past him to Elara, assessing and dismissive. "She looks half dead and wholly terrified. Is this really what the gods chose for you? A girl who can barely stand in her own power without collapsing." Elara's hands clenched. The magic still humming under her skin responded to her anger, crackling at her fingertips. Seraphine noticed. Her smile sharpened. "Oh, she has some spark after all. How entertaining." "State your business or leave," Lucian said, his voice dropping to something lethal. "Your presence here violates every treaty we signed." "Treaties?" Seraphine waved a dismissive hand. "Written before you decided to resurrect a bloodline that should have stayed extinct. The Convergence sent me to deliver a message." She pulled a scroll from the folds of her gown, tossed it at Lucian's feet. He didn't bend to retrieve it, didn't take his eyes off her. "The terms are simple," Seraphine continued. "Surrender the Morningstar girl by dawn tomorrow, and the Convergence will allow your kingdom to continue existing. Refuse, and we will raise this castle to bedrock and salt the earth where it stood." "You don't have that kind of power," Lucian said flatly. "Don't I?" Seraphine's smile was all teeth. "We have 12 of the ancient houses allied now. 12 armies. 12 bloodlines worth of magic, all focused on a single objective, ending the threat your little mate represents." She took a step forward, and Lucian's hand went to the sword at his hip. "She's dangerous, Lucian," Seraphine said, and for just a moment, something almost genuine flickered in her expression. "You know what the prophecies say. The Morningstar Queen will either save the vampire kingdoms, or destroy them entirely. Do you really want to gamble everything on which version of that future you get?" "The prophecy also says she's mine," Lucian said softly. "And I don't surrender what belongs to me." Seraphine's mask of civility cracked. "She's a weapon you can't control. A child playing with power she doesn't understand. When she loses control, and she will, how many of your people will die in the flames? That's my risk to take. And ours to prevent." Seraphine's eyes found Elara again, pinning her with a gaze that felt like ice in her veins. "Tell me, little queen, how many people are you willing to sacrifice for your destiny? How many will burn because you're too selfish to accept that some bloodlines are better off extinct?" Elara's throat tightened. The words hit harder than they should have, burrowing into doubts she'd been trying to ignore. What if Seraphine was right? What if her power was too unstable, too dangerous? The bloodstone had shattered. The castle had shaken. She'd barely begun to understand what she was capable of, and already she'd nearly lost control. How many would die if she truly unleashed what lived inside her? Don't listen to her, Lucian said, his voice cutting through her spiraling thoughts. She's trying to break your resolve. I'm trying to save lives, Seraphine corrected. Including yours, Lucian. Walk away from this. Let us handle the Morningstar problem, and you can rule in peace. Find another queen. Build another future. One that doesn't end in ashes. No. The word was absolute. Seraphine's expression hardened. Then you've chosen war. I chose my mate. Lucian's hand moved from his sword to find Elara's, his fingers lacing through hers. The contact sent warmth flooding through the cold Seraphine's words had planted. The war is just a consequence I'm willing to accept. Power flared between them again, that golden bond pulsing with renewed strength. Seraphine's lip curled. How romantic. How utterly foolish. She turned to leave, her gown sweeping across blood-stained stone. You have until dawn, Lucian. After that, the convergence comes with everything we have. And when the castle falls and your precious mate is bleeding out on our altar, remember, I gave you a choice. She vanished into shadow, leaving only the scent of winter roses and malice behind. Silence fell like a shroud. Elara realized she was shaking. 12 armies. 12 houses. How do we fight that? We don't. Lucian turned to face her, his expression grim but utterly resolved. We survive long enough for you to fully awaken your power. And then? Then what? Her voice cracked. Seraphine's right about one thing. I don't know how to control this. What if I lose control during the battle? What if I hurt your people instead of saving them? Then we deal with it. His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. But I will not surrender you to monsters who want to carve your heart out. I will not let fear make my decisions. And I will not apologize for choosing to fight for what's mine. Even if it destroys everything. Even then. His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Because you are worth burning kingdoms for, Elara Thorne. And before this is over, the Convergence will understand exactly why the gods chose you to be my queen. He kissed her forehead, gentle this time, reverent, then stepped back. Come, he said, retrieving Seraphine's scroll without reading it. We have until dawn to prepare for war. Let's make sure when the Convergence arrives, they find a queen waiting for them. Not a victim. Not a sacrifice. A queen. Elara took a shaking breath, squared her shoulders, and followed the vampire king into the castle. Outside the walls, 12 armies began their march. And in the throne room's shadows, ancient magic stirred, waiting for the bloodshed to begin. The castle prepared for war like a beast sharpening its claws. Elara watched from the window of what Lucian called her chambers. A suite of rooms that rivaled palaces in their luxury. Silk and velvet in deep crimsons and blacks. A bed large enough to sleep 5. And weapons mounted on the walls like decorative art, each one humming with enchantments she could now sense. Below in the courtyard, knights in black armor moved with military precision, reinforcing wards, positioning siege equipment, preparing for an assault that would come with the dawn. She should be down there. Should be doing something other than standing uselessly, while people prepared to die defending her. You're thinking too loud, Lucian said from the doorway. She didn't turn. How many will die tomorrow? Does it matter? He crossed the room with that predatory grace, stopping just behind her. Close enough that she could feel his presence like heat against her back. You'll blame yourself regardless of the number. Shouldn't I? She finally looked at him. He'd changed into armor, black leather reinforced with metal plates, covered by that crimson coat like a banner of war. He looked every inch the vampire king, beautiful and terrifying and utterly uncompromising. They're dying because of what I am. They're dying because the Convergence fears change, fears power they can't control. His hand settled on her shoulder, thumb brushing the curve of her neck. You didn't create this war, Elara. You're just the excuse they're using to fight it. That doesn't make the bodies any less dead. No. His honesty was brutal as always. But it does mean you have a choice in how you face it. You can collapse under the weight of guilt for a war you didn't start. Or you can become powerful enough that their deaths actually mean something. She turned to face him fully. And if I can't? If my power destroys everything instead of saving it? Then at least you'll have tried. He caught her chin, tilting her face up. I've lived 3 centuries, Elara. I've seen kingdoms rise and fall. I've watched the cowardly survive and the brave burn. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, the only unforgivable choice is letting fear make you powerless. His eyes searched hers, ancient gold meeting mortal uncertainty. You asked me once what happens if you can't do this, Lucian continued quietly. But you're asking the wrong question. The question isn't can you. It's will you. Will you fight even knowing you might fail? Will you burn even knowing you might take the world with you? Will you claim your power, even knowing it makes you the most dangerous thing alive? Her heart hammered against her ribs. You're asking me to become a monster. I'm asking you to become a queen. His thumb traced her lower lip. Monsters kill without purpose. Queens kill with precision. Learn the difference, and you might actually survive what's coming. Before she could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Lucian's expression shifted instantly, from intimate to imperious. Enter. One of his knights stepped in, bowing low. My lord. The scouts report movement on the eastern ridge. The Convergence forces are assembling faster than anticipated. They'll reach the outer walls within the hour. Elara's stomach dropped. An hour? I thought we had until dawn. Seraphine lied, Lucian said calmly, as if this didn't change everything. Of course she did. She wanted us unprepared, scrambling. He turned to the knight. Sound the alarm. Full defensive positions. And bring the bloodsworn to the throne room. The knight bowed and vanished. Silence fell heavy between them. An hour, Elara whispered. I'm not ready. My power is barely controlled. I don't know how to fight. Stop. Lucian's command cut through her spiral. You don't have the luxury of fear right now. So we compress your training into the time we have and pray it's enough. He strode to the wall, pulled down 2 swords, elegant, deadly things that sang when they left their mounts. He tossed one to her. She caught it on instinct, surprised by how natural the weight felt in her hand. Your body remembers even if your mind forgot, Lucian said, raising his own blade. Before the binding, you were trained by the best warriors in your father's court. That knowledge is still there, buried under false memories. We're going to wake it up. In an hour? We'll make do with what we have. He moved into a fighting stance, beautiful and lethal. Attack me. What? Attack me, Elara. Your enemies won't wait for you to feel ready. They'll come with steel and magic and every intention of ending you. So stop thinking like a victim and start moving like a queen. Something in his words struck a chord deep in her bones. The sword felt right in her hand. Her body did remember, muscle memory stirring like a sleeper waking. She attacked. Lucian parried easily, his blade meeting hers with a ring of steel that echoed through the chamber. Faster. Your hesitation will kill you. She struck again. He blocked, pivoted, and suddenly his sword was at her throat. Dead, he said calmly. Again. They moved through the chamber in a deadly dance. Elara struck, Lucian countered, correcting her form with brutal efficiency. Each clash of blades awakened something primal in her. Each near miss burned away another layer of the helpless peasant girl she believed herself to be. Her power began to respond, crackling along the blade, turning steel to lightning. There, Lucian breathed, his eyes gleaming as he caught her blade with his. Feel that? Your magic recognizes combat. It wants to be used. She did feel it. The power surging through her veins, no longer terrifying but exhilarating. Pure potential waiting to be shaped, directed, unleashed. They broke apart, circling each other. The Convergence will send their best, Lucian said, not even breathing hard. Seraphine will lead them. She's 300 years old, trained in every form of combat and magic known to our kind. She will try to break you psychologically before she kills you physically. What do I do? His smile was sharp as broken glass. You remember that you're not the girl she kidnapped anymore. You're the woman who shattered a bloodstone with a touch. The queen prophesied to either save or destroy our entire world. He lowered his sword. You stand your ground, and you show her exactly why the gods chose you over her. Footsteps thundered in the hallway outside. Voices shouting orders. The castle coming alive with organized chaos as soldiers rushed to positions. The battle was coming. Ready or not. Elara looked at the sword in her hand, still crackling with golden light, and made a choice. Not to be fearless, but to fight anyway. Teach me how to kill a vampire, she said quietly. Lucian's expression shifted into something proud and absolutely wicked. With pleasure, my queen, he murmured. Let's turn you into their nightmare. Outside, war drums began to sound. The Convergence had arrived. And Elara Thorne, the Morningstar queen who'd been hidden for 17 years, prepared to step into the light. Even if that light burned, even if it consumed her, even if it ended the world, she would not die on her knees. Not again. Not ever. The throne room had transformed into a war chamber. Maps covered every surface, marked with positions and strategic points. Lucian's inner circle, the blood-sworn 7 vampires who'd served him for centuries, stood around the table like statues carved from violence and loyalty. They turned as one when Elara entered, their ancient eyes assessing her with predatory focus. She forced herself not to flinch under their scrutiny. These were creatures who'd survived millennia, who'd fought in wars before her ancestors were born, and now they were expected to follow her into battle. Gentlemen, Lucian said, his hand settling possessively on the small of Elara's back. Your queen. The word hung in the air like a challenge. The tallest of the bloodsworn, a man with silver hair and scars that told stories of brutal survival, stepped forward. With respect, my lord, she's untrained. Unproven. You're asking us to stake our lives on a girl who discovered her power hours ago. I'm asking you to stake your lives on the Morningstar bloodline, Lucian corrected, his voice dropping to something dangerous. On a queen prophesied to command power none of us can match. On my mate. And if any of you have objections, voice them now so I can remove your heads before the real battle begins. Silence. Heavy and calculating. Then the scarred vampire dropped to one knee. Forgive me, my queen. My doubt was born of concern, not disrespect. One by one the others followed. 7 warriors, 7 knees hitting stone, 7 heads bowed. Something in Elara's chest cracked open. Not with power this time. With responsibility. Rise, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. And save your apologies for after the battle. If I survive this, then you can decide if I'm worth following. The scarred vampire's lips twitched. A practical queen. I can work with that. Lucian moved to the central map. Reports indicate the Convergence brought 4 of their 12 armies. Approximately 2,000 soldiers plus their elite guard. Seraphine commands personally. Just 4 armies? Another bloodsworn asked. A woman with midnight skin and eyes like amber flames. They're testing us. Seeing if we'll crumble before committing their full force. Or they think 4 is all they need, Lucian said flatly. Our forces number 300. We're outnumbered 6 to 1. The odds settled over the room like a shroud. What about the wards? Elara asked, stepping closer to the map. The castle protections? Strong enough to hold against conventional assault, the scarred warrior Marcus, she remembered from Lucian's brief introduction, answered. But if Seraphine brought Convergence mages, they'll break through eventually. We're looking at hours, not days. Lucian's finger traced the outer wall on the map. We make them bleed for every inch. Force them into choke points. Use the castle's architecture against their numbers. His eyes found Elara. And we use our secret weapon. Every gaze in the room shifted to her. What exactly are you proposing? Elara asked carefully. The wards are key to my bloodline, Lucian said. But you're my mate. Your power can amplify them, strengthen them beyond what I can do alone. If you channel through the castle's foundation, she'll burn herself out, Marcus interrupted. That much magic untrained? She'll die before dawn. Then I'll anchor her. Lucian's tone brooked no argument. Through the mate bond, my power will stabilize hers. That could kill you both, the amber-eyed woman said quietly. Yes. Lucian didn't even hesitate. But if we don't try, the Convergence breaks through, slaughters everyone in this castle, and drags Elara to their altar anyway. At least this way we fight on our terms. Elara's mind raced. He was asking her to channel enough power to reinforce an entire castle's defensive magic, something that would normally take a dozen trained mages working in concert. One wrong move and she could kill everyone she was trying to protect. There has to be another way, she said. There isn't. Lucian turned to face her fully. I know what I'm asking. I know it's too much too soon, but we're out of time and options. So the question is, do you trust me enough to let me guide you through it? Did she? This man she'd known for hours? This vampire king whose kiss still burned on her lips, whose bond thrummed in her veins like a second heartbeat. She barely knew him, but her soul recognized him like coming home. What do I need to do? Elara asked. Something fierce and proud flickered across Lucian's face. He turned to his bloodsworn. Marcus, take command of the outer defenses. Vera, he nodded to the amber-eyed woman, position archers on the eastern parapets. The rest of you know your assignments. We hold until I give the signal. Then we make them regret crossing into our territory. The bloodsworn moved as one, filing out with military precision. When the door closed, leaving them alone, Lucian pulled Elara close. You're terrified, he observed. I'm practical, she corrected. This plan has about a dozen ways to go catastrophically wrong. 13 actually. I counted. His hand cupped her face. But it's the only option that doesn't end with you on an altar and me burning the world down in revenge. So we make it work. Outside, the first explosion shook the castle walls. The siege had begun. Lucian's jaw tightened. They're testing the outer wards. We have minutes. He took her hand, pulling her toward a section of floor marked with intricate runes. Stand in the center. Don't move once the magic starts flowing. Elara stepped into the circle, her heart hammering. And if I lose control? You won't. He positioned himself opposite her, just outside the runic boundary. Because I'll be with you every step. Feel the bond, Elara. Focus on that connection. It's your anchor, your safety line. No matter how deep you go into the power, you can always find your way back through me. Another explosion. Closer this time. Close your eyes, Lucian commanded. Reach for your power. Not to control it, just to feel it. She obeyed. The magic rose instantly, eager and wild and vast. Good. His voice came from the darkness behind her eyelids. Now reach for mine. She felt for the bond, that golden thread connecting her heart to his, and followed it like a lifeline through churning chaos. His power met hers. Ancient. Cold. Controlled. Where hers was wildfire, his was deep ice. Where hers screamed, his whispered. And when they touched, the castle roared. Every ward blazed to life simultaneously. Every protective enchantment Lucian had woven over centuries activated at once, amplified by Elara's raw power, shaped by his precision. She could feel the entire structure. Every stone, every corridor, every defensive position. Could sense the Convergence forces battering against the outer walls like waves against a cliff. And she could feel their fear when the wards held. More. Lucian's voice cut through the overwhelming flood of sensation. Give them everything. Show them what happens when they threaten what's mine. Elara stopped holding back. Power erupted from her like a star going supernova. Golden light racing through the castle's foundation, turning ancient stones to conduits of devastating magic. The Convergence's next assault shattered against wards that now burned with the fury of the Morningstar bloodline. In the courtyard below, soldiers cheered. On the battlefield beyond the walls, the enemy recoiled. And in the throne room, the vampire king smiled. "That's my queen," Lucian murmured. The war had begun, and Elara Thorne was finally ready to burn. The battle raged for 3 hours before Seraphine made her move. Elara felt her coming. A cold, predatory presence cutting through the chaos like a blade through silk. She stood on the eastern parapet, her hands still glowing with residual power from maintaining the wards, watching the carnage below with a detachment that should have terrified her. Bodies littered the ground. Convergence soldiers broke in against magical barriers that wouldn't fall. Lucian's forces held their positions with brutal efficiency, cutting down anyone who breached the outer defenses. But the cost was mounting. She could feel it through the castle. Every death, every injury, every moment of suffering bleeding into the stones she'd bonded with. "She's coming for you," Lucian said, appearing at her side. Blood spattered his armor, none of it his. His eyes glowed pure gold in the darkness, more vampire than man now. "Seraphine just entered the eastern gate. She carved through our soldiers like they were nothing." Elara's hands tightened on the parapet wall. "How many? Does it matter?" His tone was harsh. "She won't stop until she reaches you. This was always going to end with the two of you facing each other. Then let me face her." Elara turned to him, surprised by her own resolve. "End this before more of your people die." "Our people," Lucian corrected. "And I'm not sending you to fight her alone. You said it yourself, this ends with us. With her and me." She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I can feel the power now. Really feel it. I know what I'm capable of." Knowing and controlling are different things. But his grip tightened on hers. "If you lose control in the middle of combat, then you anchor me, like you've been doing all night." She pulled him closer, close enough to see the war raging behind his eyes, between the king who needed to protect his mate and the strategist who knew she was right. "Trust me, Lucian. Trust what we are together." His jaw clenched. "I hate this." "I know." She touched his face, thumb brushing the sharp line of his cheekbone. "But you taught me that the only unforgivable choice is letting fear make you powerless. So let me be powerful." For a long moment he just looked at her. Then he pulled her into a kiss, fierce and possessive and tasting of desperation. When he released her, his expression had shifted to something resigned and absolutely lethal. "The courtyard," he said. "We face her together in the courtyard. Witnesses on both sides. Make it a formal challenge so the Convergence can't claim treachery when their leader falls." "When?" Elara raised an eyebrow. "Not if." His smile was all teeth. "You're the Morningstar Queen, destined to either save or destroy our world. She's just a bitter ex-lover with delusions of grandeur. I know where I'm placing my bets." They descended into the courtyard side by side. King and queen, mate and mate, walking into what could be their final battle with their heads held high. The fighting stopped. On both sides, soldiers backed away, creating a circle of empty space in the blood-soaked stone. And Seraphine stepped into it from the opposite side. She looked immaculate despite the carnage. Not a hair out of place, her midnight blue gown pristine. Her ice blue eyes fixed on Elara with the focus of a predator who'd finally cornered her prey. "How dramatic," Seraphine said, her voice carrying across the sudden silence. "The lost princess finally decides to stop hiding behind her lover's armies." "I'm not hiding," Elara said, stepping forward. Lucian moved with her, but she touched his arm, a gentle request to stop. He did, though every line of his body screamed protest. "I'm offering you single combat. Your life against mine. Winner decides the fate of the Convergence's war." Seraphine's laugh was crystalline and cruel. "You think you can bargain with me, child? You've had your power for less than a day. I've been honing mine for 3 centuries. Then it should be an easy victory." Elara drew the sword Lucian had given her, the blade igniting with golden fire the moment it cleared the scabbard. Unless you're afraid. Something dangerous flickered across Seraphine's perfect features. Afraid of you? A half-trained girl playing at being queen. Prove it. Elara fell into the fighting stance Lucian had drilled into her, body memory rising to meet conscious choice. Face me. No interference. No armies. Just you and the girl you think is so beneath you. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. Then she smiled, slow and vicious. Very well. I'll enjoy carving that arrogance out of you piece by piece. She raised her hand, and a blade of pure ice materialized, jagged and lethal, pulsing with 300 years of accumulated power. When I kill you, Seraphine said softly, I want you to know it's not personal. It's simply necessary. Your bloodline is too dangerous, too unstable. And Lucian, her gaze flicked to him, will thank me eventually, when he's not drowning in grief and misplaced loyalty. He won't have the chance, Elara said. And she attacked. The courtyard exploded into motion. Elara's blade met Seraphine's ice with a sound like breaking stars. Power erupted from the impact. Golden fire against frozen death. Light against darkness, prophecy against fear. They moved in a deadly dance, steel and magic intertwining. Seraphine fought with the precision of centuries, every strike calculated, every movement efficient. But Elara fought with something Seraphine had forgotten. Raw, unfiltered power that didn't know its own limits. Their blades clashed again and again. Ice shattered. Fire consumed. The stones beneath their feet cracked from the magical pressure. You're strong, Seraphine admitted, her breathing finally showing strain. I'll grant you that. But strength without control is just chaos waiting to destroy everything. She thrust forward, her ice blade extending impossibly fast. Elara barely dodged, felt the frozen edge slice across her ribs. Pain blossomed, hot and immediate. Blood dripped onto ancient stone, and the world stopped. Elara felt it, her blood touching the courtyard floor. The same floor she bonded with through the wards, the same stones that carried 3,000 years of vampire magic. Her blood recognized this place, called to it, and the castle answered. Power erupted from the ground like a geyser, pure, devastating, apocalyptic. Not just hers, not just the wards, but something older, something that had been sleeping in the foundation since before the castle was built. Ancient magic. Primal magic. The kind that built kingdoms and ended worlds. Seraphine's eyes went wide. No, that's not possible. You can't access the deep magic you're not. Not what? Elara's voice came out layered, echoing with power that transcended her mortal throat. Not worthy? Not strong enough? Not the prophesied queen. Golden light blazed from her skin, so bright soldiers on both sides shielded their eyes. Runes appeared on her arms, not the simple ones from before, but intricate patterns that spiraled up to her shoulders, across her collarbone, down her spine. Ancient script that predated language, marking her as what she'd always been meant to be. The true heir of the Morningstar line. You should have killed me when I was 6, Elara said softly, advancing on Seraphine, who for the first time looked genuinely afraid. You should have finished what you started instead of just binding my memories and hoping I'd never wake up. We were trying to be merciful, Seraphine whispered, backing away. You were trying to be safe. Elara raised her blade. But there is no safety from prophecy, no hiding from fate, no escaping what the gods set in motion. She struck, not with steel, with pure power. The blast caught Seraphine in the chest, lifting her off her feet and slamming her into the courtyard wall hard enough to crack stone. The Convergence leader crumpled, her ice blade shattering into 1,000 pieces. Silence fell like a guillotine. Elara stood in the center of the courtyard, blazing with power, her sword still burning with golden fire, and looked at the assembled armies. The challenge is complete, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the battlefield. Seraphine Noir has fallen. The Convergence war ends now. The Convergence armies didn't attack. They stood frozen at the courtyard's edges, watching their fallen leader struggle to breathe against shattered stone, watching the girl who'd been their target blaze with power that made the air itself shimmer with heat. Elara could feel their fear. Taste it like copper on her tongue. She should end this. Press the advantage. Destroy them while they were paralyzed with shock. But something in her chest, some piece of the girl she'd been, the seamstress who'd run through rain-soaked streets just wanting to survive, pulled her back from that edge. "Stand down," she said, her voice carrying across the battlefield with unnatural clarity. "All of you. This war is over. You don't command us." One of the Convergence generals spat, though his sword arm trembled. "You're an abomination. A threat that must be careful." Lucian's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He moved to stand beside Elara, his presence a wall of lethal support. "You're addressing my queen, my mate, and the woman who just proved she could erase your entire army with a thought." His smile was all teeth. "Choose your next words very carefully." The general's jaw worked. His eyes darted to Seraphine's broken form, to the golden light still radiating from Elara's skin, to the cracked stones and shattered weapons littering the courtyard. Then slowly he dropped to one knee. One by one the others followed. Hundreds of soldiers kneeling in the blood-soaked courtyard, heads bowed before a queen they'd come to kill. Elara's breath caught. The weight of it, the responsibility, the power, the absolute certainty that every choice she made from this moment forward would shape kingdoms, settled over her shoulders like a crown made of iron and flame. The Convergence came here believing the old bloodlines were too dangerous to survive, she said quietly. And you were right to fear us. This power, she gestured to the light still pulsing from her skin, could destroy everything you've built, could tear down the order you've created, could burn the world to ash. Silence. Absolute and suffocating. But it could also save it, Elara continued. Could protect it. Could build something better than what came before. She looked at each kneeling soldier, meeting their eyes, refusing to let them look away. The prophecy says I'll either save the vampire kingdoms or destroy them. Which future we get depends on the choices we make right now. Together. You're asking for peace, the general said slowly. After we came to slaughter you. I'm offering mercy, Elara corrected, which you're free to refuse. But if you choose war, if you make me your enemy instead of your queen, I promise you won't like what I become. The threat hung in the air, undeniable and absolute. Lucian's hand found hers, their fingers lacing together. Through the bond she felt his pride, his fierce satisfaction, his absolute certainty that she was exactly what she was meant to be. Take your wounded, Lucian said, his voice carrying the weight of royal command. Return to the Convergence Council. Tell them the Morningstar line has returned. Tell them their war failed. And tell them, his eyes glowed pure gold, that any house that continues to threaten my mate will answer to me personally. The general rose slowly, signaling his forces. They began gathering their injured, their dead, moving with the careful precision of soldiers who just brushed against extinction and survived. Seraphine struggled to her feet, one hand pressed against her shattered ribs. Blood stained her perfect gown. Her ice-blue eyes found Elara with an expression that mixed hatred and grudging respect. This isn't over, she rasped. Yes, Elara said quietly. It is. You just haven't accepted it yet. Seraphine's lips curled, but she said nothing else. Just turned and limped toward her retreating forces, leaving a trail of blood and broken pride in her wake. Within the hour, the courtyard was empty except for Lucian's people. The castle erupted in cheers. Elara stood in the center of it all, exhausted, bloodied, still glowing faintly with residual power, and felt something shift inside her. The last piece of the frightened seamstress girl finally dissolving, replaced by someone stronger. Someone forged in fire and prophecy and impossible choices. Someone who could carry the weight of a crown. Lucian pulled her close, his forehead touching hers, oblivious to the celebrating soldiers around them. You terrified them, he murmured. Showed them exactly why the gods chose you. I terrified myself, she admitted. Good. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. Power that doesn't frighten you is power you're not respecting. He pulled back slightly, his expression shifting to something almost vulnerable. You could have killed them all. Should have, by every strategic measure. Why didn't you? Elara thought about it. About the fear in those soldiers' eyes. About Seraphine broken against stone. About the prophecy that said she'd either save the kingdoms or destroy them. Because I want to prove the prophecy wrong, she said finally. I want to be the queen who does both. Who's powerful enough to destroy everything but chooses to build instead. Who's terrifying enough to end wars but wise enough to offer mercy. Something in Lucian's expression cracked. That carefully maintained control slipping to reveal the raw emotion beneath. My mate, he breathed. My queen. My absolutely devastating ruin. He kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of promises that had nothing to do with war, and everything to do with the future they'd fight to build together. When they finally broke apart, the courtyard had gone quiet. Every soldier, every knight, every servant who'd survived the battle stood watching, waiting for their queen to speak. Elara took a breath, squared her shoulders, and let the last of her fear burn away in the fire of her own power. Tonight we won a battle, she said, her voice ringing clear across the courtyard. Tomorrow we build a kingdom worth saving. Together. The cheers that erupted shook the castle to its foundations. And somewhere in the ruins of the battlefield, in the spaces between heartbeats and destiny, the world shifted, rearranged itself around the girl who'd fled hunters in the rain and emerged as the queen who would remake everything. She came into his world running from hunters, a terrified girl who didn't know her own name. She left it as a queen who would make kingdoms kneel. Because some bonds aren't just written in the stars. They're forged in blood, sealed in fire, and destined to burn for eternity. This is Elara Thorne's beginning, and the world will never be the same.